what it looks like to broadcast live or to stream live from a venue. So just a quick feel for the room. How many of you are doing this today? Some sort of streaming? A couple. And how many are looking to do it in the near future, are really interested in learning about it? Great. Well, then you found the right class, right? Cool. We're going to talk technically as far as some solutions to actually make this happen, but I definitely want to walk through kind of the theory behind it and the reasons for doing it, some of the pitfalls that you might land on, and definitely if there are questions, we'd like to take them at the end for sure. Streaming is definitely something that opens the doorway for churches, but it definitely also comes with a large amount of add-ons to what you have to plan and prepare. Streaming is just kind of the end of the package. There's a lot of solutions and pieces that go into before that ending piece that we have to think about as well. So let's start first, though, with kind of the why. Why would we want to stream in the church? There's definitely some that would say streaming's a bad idea, that churches shouldn't do it. So I'm kind of going to walk through that a little bit more here. First, I'll just say this, right? So imagine if your church had access to a worldwide TV network and someone came up to you and said, hey, I'd love to be able to put your church on TV all across the world. How much would it cost me? It'll cost you nothing, or it's super, super affordable. Who of us wouldn't turn that down, right? That's what internet streaming has become. It's something that's accessible anywhere, all the time. So a couple different things here. It's worldwide, and I'm sorry for the projection. It's really not so great, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. But it's worldwide. It's easily shareable, so things like Facebook and Twitter and email and those things have made a streaming solution not only something that can be accessed live, but something that makes it really easy for your congregation to share that link and spread the word. So those who maybe don't even, maybe are connected to someone that's across the country, now they experience and find out about what you're doing in your church because of streaming. It expands the reach outside your geographic location, which we just talked about. People may hear the message that normally wouldn't step through the door. That's important, whether that's around the corner or around the world. We have, some people might say, well, why would I stream it? I'd rather them come in person. You would, of course. But for some people, they say, I'm not going to come to church, right? I'm not going to step through that door. This is that entry point for them, the ability for them to be able to, for the first time, experience what you're doing in your church. So that's for them. And then also, I'd say it may help shift your church's focus outward. Sometimes a lot of, we as a church tend to think about those who are coming through our door and what we're doing for our ministries and whatever. Once you've changed that focus to realize that people are looking in from the outside, your focus may begin to change as far as how you approach them, and also may improve your communication with even new guests. And instead of assuming that everyone in the seats knows what's going on, you'll begin to talk a little differently and think a little bit differently, even just from a day-to-day context. So, who is the audience we're talking to? I think it's important to know who you want to stream to. It's not just the cool thing, the next thing to do. You want to understand for your church, what's the purpose, what's the reason, what's the rationale behind it. So I wrote a couple things, outside of just we want to get the word out to the whole world. Are you trying to reach families in your church? Are you trying to reach your community? Are you trying to reach a specific demographic? A couple and I'll throw out a lot of examples along the way here as far as kind of what we're doing. If you don't know, we're streaming CMS live right now. That's why we have cameras in the room, which is pretty cool. I will say this, I'm the media director here at the church, and I'm kind of playing on home turf here, but this is the worst class I've had to teach for the whole weekend because this is the one the control room gets to see, so they all can see how terrible I am as a teacher. So I'm sure they're making fun of me right now and talking on intercom and all kinds of great stuff. So, but I will say we do streaming pretty extensively here at the chapel. One, for our vintage group, our college group, we've done what we call a hotspot network, which basically is groups of college kids who meet in dorm rooms or on college campuses in different areas, and they experience what we have here live as a group. So instead of it being just, hey, we want all of our college kids to get on and watch individually, we've reached out to leaders on different campuses and said, hey, if you'd like, you can take the opportunity to watch our stream live and form a group in your church context or in your group context or on your college campus or whatever. So for churches that don't have a college ministry, we're providing something for them, teaching and worship and those things. For people who, say, hey, I'm just a dude on a college campus and I want to start a group, but I'm not a teacher, well, that's an opportunity for them. So think about that as a demographic. What's your target focus? It's hard to say everybody. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, we'd like for anyone to watch. But from just a marketing and a focus and strategy perspective, it's good for us to think about who is that group we're going to try and reach first. Don't discount people that are in your church either. That seems strange, but we've had a ton of people here say how thankful they are for the live stream, just so that they stay connected, so they don't miss it. They go on vacation. Or we have, mothers who have a sick kid and they're sitting at home. They get to still watch the message and participate with the worship, even though they're not here physically. So then that kind of leads to the next question of, well, will streaming impact my live attendance? I've heard that argument before. Well, if I start streaming, people might just stay home and not actually come to church. It's never happened, right? I've never met one ministry or one group that said, hey, we're going to stream live, and a year from then, their church was empty and everyone was watching online at home, right? That's never the progression for these type of things. These are outlets that reach new people. Those that are attending, they want to attend. People who watch online, our vintage group, for example, they start watching online, but when we have big events and big concerts, we have people driving from, Ohio and all kinds of places to come and experience it live because there is that desire to be there in person. This is a window into what you're doing, right? So I would say kind of if that's a concern of yours, think about it shift that perspective and think about instead, who could you show off what you're doing and who could you impact, as opposed to, well, we don't want to impact our attendance or whatever. So, so that's definitely kind of the why. There's some more things that you might want to think about from a leadership perspective. I didn't get a poll of the room. How many of you are more of the technical realm of the church, kind of serve in the tech media area? And how many of you are either senior leadership or something like that? Okay, so that's two different sides of the conversation, right? For those who are technical, you're going, oh, this would be so cool to do. If only I could convince my pastor this is something we could do, right? And those of you who are in senior leadership, you may be saying, this would be really cool to do. I don't know if we can pull it off, right? So we're going to try and answer both of those questions along the way here, and hopefully that'll work for you. All right, let's talk about the components, the necessary pieces that kind of will make this work. Like I said, streaming is kind of the end all. That's the end solution, but it's not. You don't go buy a streaming kit and then all of a sudden your church is streaming. There's a lot more components and pieces that make this work. So I'm not sure if you can see on here. I don't know why that's so bad. Sorry. So a couple things here. First is the video system, right? If you don't have a live video system, I would say start there, okay? In my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to set up a webcam in the back of the church and stream that. You can do an audio podcast, that'd be great, but a wide shot of the room doesn't really do a whole lot for people that are watching online. You got to remember, and I'm going to kind of lean back towards a class I taught yesterday on live video systems that isn't so much related to streaming, but it's really important because that's the product you're putting online. The quality of the stream, the quality of the video content is the experience you're providing for people. So when somebody watches online and all they can see is a little shot of the back of the room, that's their experience of what you're putting on. Whereas when you can provide multiple camera angles and different things to really let them capture and understand, that makes so much more sense. So even like today, and I know I'm going to kind of point out things that in every other session we haven't done, but even in this room, right, we have two cameras. One that's kind of a straight on shot that's facing me, that is probably the tighter shot, and that's a direct connection. I can make eye contact with that camera in the back and I can speak to the online audience. This camera over here can provide an additional shot, maybe a shot of the whole house to see that people are sitting in the room. I'm not crazy talking to myself and pretending like I have an audience, or maybe it's things that if I'm going to pick something up and hold it, that they can get a tighter shot to show that. That allows to a greater experience than just one camera. If I were to right now say, raise your hand if, and that camera's still tight on me, well, then the rest of the people online have no idea what the response was unless I think to explain that to them, which would really be jarring for the live service. And again, you got to remember both audiences. Having a live stream doesn't mean you forget about people sitting in the seats in front of you. It's an additional component to church, right? So does that make sense? Everybody understand what I'm saying there? Okay. So as far as multicam, I think that, a video system of high quality is really important. I have a diagram to put on the screen here, but it's not to make a ton of, I guess it looks not all right, not too bad. Real quick, and I'm going to take just a couple of minutes on this, so I know this is not the class you signed up to come to, but video system complexity does matter, right? This is the most simple video system you can put together, a camera and a display device, right? When you start to stream, you have to have a little bit more complexity in order to make that work, because your camera source has to go more places than just to the projector, unless you're going to stream only for streaming's sake, and maybe then the signal path would be camera to encoder or to an input device, which we'll talk about in a second, and that's it. But again, consider the architecture and the framework that you have for a video system before you begin. So as you get a little more complex here, you may have a couple cameras that go into some sort of a switching or scaling device, and then from there, and I'll just go to the next one here, multiple destinations. So think about how you'll actually do that physically. If you have a couple different cameras, and then you go from there into a switcher, who's switching that? How are you communicating those things? How are you going to make this a high-quality piece? Because you really are putting on a broadcast, so you have to think about that in terms of, the high quality or whatever. Now, again, that totally depends, too, on the type of church service that you're putting on. And I know, again, I'm kind of regurgitating some things from a video class we taught, so for those of you who were there, thanks for bearing with me. But it's important to think about what you're trying to actually cover. If you have a rock-type concert, if you have a very high energy music program, that's going to be a lot harder to cover with cameras than a piano and organ and a speaker. So again, to consider that, and also think about what you watch on TV. When you watch a rock concert, it's not one static camera. If it is, typically you change channels. So think about the same for your context, and also remember, once you've gone to an online audience, there's a lot of options out there. So you got to think about, why would they want to watch your stream? And one of the reasons may be content. One of the reasons may be connection. They know about your church. They know someone who knows about the church. But it also just might be quality. So just consider that. But before you dive into streaming, think about how you're going to create that quality. So that's step number one as far as getting stuff going. Step two is, how do you handle audio, right? Because video is important, but audio is also important if you want people to hear the message. So when we set up streaming for CMS, I sat with a couple different guys, Matt and Bruce and them, and we talked about why this will be different. What are some of the things that are important to remember in the live scenario to make streaming work? And one of them is the microphone, right? Because if I walk off the mic and talk just to you guys, well, you can hear me just fine, but sorry for everybody watching online, they couldn't hear everything I just said because I walked away, or it was very faint, or the audio guy upstairs is now scrambling to figure out why the audio just went away, right? So every time, no matter what size context, everything that goes into your system has to be captured on audio. When we were just doing a thing with Blues Council in the worship center, and they were asking questions. Well, they could have just yelled from the house to the stage, and everyone in the room could hear, but the online audience couldn't hear. So now we had to walk around with a mic and make sure that they were captured so the online audience understood. And if you don't do that, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but you've just disconnected your audience from the viewing ability. So it's important to think about that. Audio as a whole, I'll say there's three ways that you can do that. The most simple, and I listed them in kind of order of... oh, look at that. No background is a lot better, isn't it? Look at that. So everyone's there we go. So I kind of listed them as far as bad, okay, and great. The first and easiest would be just take a house feed, right? That means whatever you're mixing in the house, you just take that off your board and plug it into your encoder, and away you go. Not great for a bunch of reasons. And I talk about this in each one of these classes, that controlling your system is important. When you do a house feed, you're mixing that audio for the sound of the room. So if you have drums and they're loud and you're in a smaller room, you're not going to put a whole lot of that in the mix. But for those watching online, they now hear only what will be coming through the headphones of the person sitting at the soundboard, which sounds nothing like it does in the room. You don't have an opportunity to add things like house mics or crowd reaction type stuff, right? Those are key components that when you watch, say, I'm sure many of you are huge fans of American Idol, but something like that, they are mixing specifically for you. So you hear things that you wouldn't hear in the house. Matter of fact, if you go to a live taping of a TV show, the PA is turned way down so that the broadcast gets good audio, because that's the priority. So a house mix will work. You'll get audio of some kind there, but it may not be a great experience. Second, which is a little bit of a better option, is to somehow separately feed audio from the board you're already using. That might be an aux bus or something like that, where you could add a house mic and send that just to the web encoder. You could add other different inputs and mix that separately. It's a little cumbersome, especially if it's one operator, but at least you have more control over it than you would if you were just using the house feed. And then the best option would be some sort of a dedicated mix. And this can be either super complex or super simple. For the concerts tonight, for everything we did all day, we've had somebody upstairs whose job it is to mix audio just for online. There's a separate soundboard, that's their whole job. And they don't care what the person down at front of house is doing. Their mix is just for the online audience. They listen with in-ears, they listen to some small speakers, they do a couple different things to make sure that the quality coming out of my little computer speakers sounds really good to that audience. And so that's the best way. And you can do that with a real small soundboard. If you have some sort of a split system where you can bring inputs into that, that's an option for you. But again, that's much more complex. So as I keep saying, consider the cost, consider what it's going to take in order to build that up. And maybe you don't start out that way, but at least you need to know that's the goal if you want a high quality piece. So some things to consider there. All right, next would be, and this is maybe sounds like a no-brainer, but got to make sure I say it, internet connection. If you want to stream online, you need to have an internet connection, right? I hope that everybody figured that out when they came to this class. If you say, oh, I don't have internet, well, you maybe want to go join the other class. Internet connection is important, and obviously an internet connection that can handle your stream is important. Now, that will depend on location, that will depend on a bunch of different factors. But surprisingly, it doesn't take as much as you would think to make that work. We actually have 2 encoders running this weekend. We're doing 2 simultaneous classes each session. So this is one of them, and there's something else going on, I think, in the choir room. So we're feeding 2 separate video encoders that are sending out to 2 separate streams online. One of them actually is running off of PowerLink or Roadrunner, one of the cable, Time Warner cable, and it's fast enough, right? So it's the highest level that they allow in terms of speed or whatever. But the issue with internet streaming is you don't care about, when you see the commercials on TV that say, oh, we offer 15 megabytes down and whatever. You don't really care about down, you care about up. And usually up is a lot slower than down unless you're doing fiber or some sort of a T1 line. So you got to be very careful about that. Think about what it is that you're allowing for in your building. Do you have enough upload speed to make it work? And again, that's something that I can't really give you a number to say this will work and this won't. There are some thresholds that we can talk about, but those are some things you want to just research again before you say, yep, we're going to take the jump and stream, buy all this equipment and then go, oh, shoot, my dial-up modem's just not going to do it for me, So that definitely will not work for you. So, and then the next step would be an encoder, right? You need to have a dedicated computer for encoding. I talked to a church a while ago who was thinking about doing it. We had all these conversations. Yeah, it'd be great. And then when they told me they were going to use the same computer that they're using for ProPresenter to do their web stream, I said, not going to work, right? You have to be able to have a dedicated machine whose whole job is to crank out that internet stream. The good news is you can build it yourself. You can buy a turnkey solution. We'll talk about all those different things. But just know, again, in terms of the necessary components or whatever, this is something that you have to have. And you have to have it sitting. Its whole job is to encode that video solution for you, right? And so, again, you can think about different ways to feed that signal to the encoder. So kind of going back to my diagrams of here, I don't have an encoder listed on here, but coming off of that, either the switcher or the distribution amp, going to an encoder, how are you going to feed that? So real quick, jumping back to video class for a second, consider what it is you're going to send. Now, again, you could, and we're going to demonstrate this in a second, you could take a FireWire cable off of a computer, plug it into your laptop, and stream, and it would work. But that will only allow you for a single source, right? So how do you then begin to build a system where you can cut and switch and adjust cameras and inputs and that kind of stuff? FireWire may be a solution, not the best solution, most likely. You're going to want to look into some sort of a switcher that can accept the source. So once you figure that out, however you do that, you need to know what your output signal type will be. So that may be VGA, DVI, HDMI, preferably something professional like SDI, right? And so if you do something like that, whatever solution you choose, make sure that the encoding solution you choose allows for that signal input, which seems strange. It seems kind of straightforward, but it may be a strange concept when you get the box to your church and open it up and realize that the connectors don't fit, right? So I'll just give you a couple specs real fast. If you build an encoding machine yourself, and there's specs on different sites we'll show you in a second, but things like Blackmagic offer cards that actually have SDI inputs, component inputs, different things like that. And those are great because you can literally take a tap right off of your video system, plug it in, and away you go, right? But also think about that you're feeding audio at the same time. So, all right, and then we're going to jump into kind of the nuts and bolts behind how we make streaming happening. Before we go any further, and I will relay the question because we have to use the mics in order to have the stream work. Does anybody have any questions before we get into the specifics as far as theory? Yes, sir.
What was the name of the product that you just said?
Blackmagic, they make a lot of switchers and converter devices and cards for computers. Yeah.
That's not the encoder.
That's not the encoder, correct.
What software would you use?
I'm going to get there in 1 second. Yep. Anybody else as far as theory? Yes, sir.
Does it make sense to use the same audio mix that you use for recording for streaming?
The question was, does it make sense to use the same stream or same mix from recording as you do for the stream? That depends on what you're recording. Probably yes. If you're recording for an archive that someone will watch on their computer or TV later, likely that's a similar audience to what would be happening live. So yeah, the answer is probably yes. Again, and the only exception from that would be back to our vintage group as an example. We do live programming, but then at the end we have someone talk specifically to the broadcast audience to say, hey, we're glad you watched, join us next week, that kind of stuff. If you didn't want that on your recording, you'd want to be able to isolate that so that you could feed that separately. But that may be down the road later or something like that. But typically, yeah, a recording feed would work for you. So any other questions on kind of just the theory and the thoughts behind it? Anybody scared off so far? Anybody say, I'm not streaming, forget it? Okay, good. Oh, that's a good thing. Nobody is. All right, cool. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple things. I'll give you a couple different options as far as the easier ones. There's 100 different streaming options online that you could find. We've actually played with a couple of them. So I'm just going to mention two, and if you want more, you can definitely research them. Livestream.com and Ustream.com are two streaming solutions. And the only reason that I would specifically recommend them is, A, we're using Livestream today and really actually have been pretty pleased with it. And two, it's really user-friendly. The other solutions, you have to use things like a flash media encoder and kind of set it up yourself, and there's a bunch of different things that make it difficult. These two solutions, they're just like, they're a dream when it comes to setup and walkthrough and documentation. So if you've never done something like this before and you want to find a solution that's easy, so we're going to talk about Livestream today, but either one of those are Ustream with a U, not Y-O-U, just the letter U, Ustream. Yeah, so we use Livestream, and again, today we're using two encoders. We actually use two encoders every week, and the reason for that is twofold. One, we do a high quality and a low quality stream, and the reason for that is people's different internet connection speeds. So we have a low quality connection for those who have a lesser ability to connect, but we still want them to be able to hear. And then for those who want to watch a better quality signal, they can switch over to the high quality. Livestream is working on a software update that will let it be adaptive, meaning that you use one encoding process, higher bit rate, and then at the user end it decides that, kind of like YouTube does right now, but they haven't quite implemented that. So for now we're doing the dual, and hopefully we'll be able to. Second, honestly, is backup, which for us, because especially for vintage, what we're doing with as far as groups are relying on that. Obviously, either way, people are relying on this as their way to attend church sometimes. But so we have two encoders running. So literally, if one goes down, I can just switch the other one over, and now that this one is feeding both channels, and it makes it a lot less scary for me when if all of a sudden something crashes. So, and then we use Livestream's built-in software called Procaster, which you can download for free if you have a channel. Now, before we go into just the the nuts and bolts of it, I do want to just ask about or offer this as a thought. There are the options for paid versus free. And a lot of churches opt for the free option for obvious reasons. The problem with free is someone's got to pay for it, right? They're not giving that to you for free. And the way they do that is ads. And the problem with ad-sponsored streaming is you as the church have no control over those ads. And this may sound like a no-brainer, but when you start to get, the rubber hits the road as far as the cost, you might say, well, free is free, I'd really highly discourage that. And for a couple of reasons. One is just, the image that you're, let's just be honest. The last thing you'd want to have happen is in the middle of your message, an ad pops up for something that doesn't fit your culture, is inappropriate, something like that. And now the person who's watching calls your church office and says, why are you running ads for whatever online, right? Well, you don't have an answer for that because you didn't even know it happened. It doesn't even, Also, I think one of them actually interrupts the stream to play the ad, so it's super distracting. You assume does that? Yeah. I know that this costs money, but again, for me, if you look at it from a ministry perspective, it's something you either should do and invest in or don't do, and that's my personal opinion, but I would say steer clear of the free. So just if you're going on the website and you go, oh, what is he talking about cost? You can do this for free. I know of it as a free option, but I wouldn't personally recommend it, right? So I'm going to just, if you guys can see this, which I hope you can, we're going to dive into kind of the nuts and bolts of getting it working. So first, and this is just going to show more of the benefits of it. Let me just turn off that, maybe. Bear with me one sec here. So we'll turn off ProPresenter so we can see the desktop. And then this is Procaster, which is a standalone piece. And it's really, like you said, it's really nice user interface, right? You load it up, it works on Mac and PC. You do want to consider whatever computer you load it on, if you build your own or you build your own system, that it can sustain what you're doing as far as speed and system resources. Obviously, their website lists minimum requirements. Don't skimp on that because this is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And in order to make this happen, this isn't an easy process, and coding is pretty processor intensive. But you'll see, I get a couple different options. So the Go Live button is the one you can't miss, right? Because if all the settings are already right, this is when your computer crashes and you want to start in a real hurry, and you launch the software, there's a giant button. Okay, go live. So it's nice. But before we get there, you'll want to know a couple different things that do work through here. One is you get to choose your input type. So right now I just have the built-in camera, because I'm using my laptop here. But on the encoders that we have, video-wise, it'll show our Blackmagic Decklink card, which is an SDI input card that basically, off of our switcher, we have a cable that plugs into the back of it, and it's a direct digital video right to it. And then also I can choose my quality preset. So down here, there's mobile, normal, and there's a whole bunch of packages in between. What they do offer with live stream is kind of a coupled stream, which allows you to do like normal and mobile. And the cool thing about mobile, obviously, is that now people on your phones can get it, which sounds like, well, who's gonna do that? We just had one of our volunteers tell us that they were driving back from a vacation, and they were driving through West Virginia, and they had their phone sitting on their dashboard listening to church while they were driving home, which was just, to me, really cool. And it kind of shows, the doors that get opened up because of its broadcastability, something that you just can't accomplish with other media methods. So it's really, to me, it was just cool. I'm like, that's really neat. I didn't know they had internet in West Virginia, but it was cool when I found out they did. So. So then and I'm just going to walk you through this real quick. In preferences, a couple different options here, mobile options. Live stream will record your service to their website. So if you want to use them as to kind of post the videos later, that's an option. It's not the best option, to be honest, because you can't edit it later. So it's kind of like, the user sees exactly what you encoded from start to stop, which we don't do because of that lack of control. But it's an option. But let me show you here, again, I can choose different video options. I can choose the size of the video being displayed. And then in audio, I get to choose some options. But this is the cool thing. There's an audio mixer that shows up here. So it shows me exactly what's coming in real time. So again, give you some, maybe this will scare you away, but first thing on Friday morning, we did our stream, right? And our encoder actually has two different audio sources, one that's coming through the Blackmagic card and one that's a separate analog input. unintentionally for backup. I would like to say, oh, we have it as a backup, but it's unintentionally for backup because we changed some things this weekend. But the cool thing was one of them stopped working. While we were still streaming, I opened this panel, and I just changed it. I just went, okay, well, instead of using, because actually we only have one input showing up here, I just went, okay, well, instead of that, I'm going to do this instead. And I could see the meters jumping again. So without having to stop the stream, I was able to make that adjustment. They tout this as, oh, you could mix live on this. I wouldn't suggest that. And again, the reason is because now you're taxing your computer, having someone click the mouse and change that. Monitoring that would be a nightmare. But just the selectability, and again, user interface, I really like the fact that it's just simple. You can actually go in and do these things as opposed to like Flash Media Encoder, for example, doesn't have this kind of user interface. It's tough. So that's that. And then obviously, if you want to add multiple sources, you can, but that's how that works. So I won't show you the rest because that's kind of more for desktop streaming and things that don't apply to this. So then up at the top here, you have options for channels. So I made a channel. These are actually the channels we're streaming on live, which real fast, let me just pull that up, and I will show you. So we'll peek in on Rick's class here to see what he's doing. But you'll see, obviously, this is the same player that we're using Procaster to do, and he's live over in the choir room. And thanks to our awesome web developer here in-house, if we switch over to the other class, then we should switch back. Yeah, we should switch back right away. So, but you'll see, again, the fact that it's live and it's accessible just like that is, to me, it still kind of blows my mind that we're able to do this in this day and age. So that's basically Procaster's running that. I'm going to show you on this end here. So let me go back to Procaster here. If we go live, and I'll just kind of point this in a different direction here, and get live. Right? This is the interface you get once you're live, right? So we have the camera over here that I'm using. We can in real time tell that the stream is actually working. Let me just pull this over here so it makes it easier. Oh, it's a little delayed here. And then this is what, if you don't even have a website, if you say, well, we don't have a web developer that can implement this for us because we have that really cool CMS wrapper that it's sitting in. Livestream also offers embedded hosting. So they make a website for you that's streaming this live right now. So all I did was just download this software on my laptop, hit stream, and go. And you might say, well, Skype can do that, everything can do that. The difference between Skype and streaming is a couple things. One, flexibility. You can't do inputs and outputs the way you can in something like this with Skype. And the bigger thing is viewer count. You can't do 1,000 people watching a Skype connection like you can a streaming connection. So it's broadcast instead of connectivity. So it may look very similar, but it's not obviously the same. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how that works. And even live, I can change my source. I can do things like that. It's being a little strange, so let me just drag that back over here. But that's it in a nutshell. And then obviously from there, my package, my video sources that come in, that are downstream, come into this thing. And that's it. I turn this on, I let it rip, and that's it for the rest of the time. So, all right? So any questions there? Anybody confused at this point? Everybody good so far? Yes? Correct. Right. Correct.
How much ballpark numbers? What are the monthly fees?
Sure. It depends totally on live stream, Ustream, we all stream. They use a viewer hour count. So they sell packages that basically allow you to have X amount of viewer hours. So if you're watching for an hour, that counts. And if you're watching for an hour, that's 2 hours, right? So even if you both watch only an hour thing, but 10 people watch, it's 10 hours. Or if one person watches 10 hours, it's also 10 hours. So that's how that functions. Got it. And then, but the nice thing that's cool about live stream, and again for CMS, we bought a large package, so we're able to not have to worry so much about minute by minute. We have a decent amount of buffer there. And if you do go over, it's a charge, but it's minimal. So I'm hesitant to give you a number because it's for us, we pay annually, so it's not the same. But if you go to their website, they have all the pricing there. I'm sorry, I don't have the specific answer for that. So, any other questions? Okay, real fast. Let me just talk about pitfalls. I think this is something that could be of concern, and I don't know. I don't want to scare you off from doing it because I think every church should at least consider streaming as an option. I definitely think unless you've committed to the core pieces that go along with it, that it's not a great idea for you to jump in head first. But it's a window into what you're creating that I don't know why you wouldn't at least consider tapping into the resource. But a couple pitfalls that are really, really important. One is, do you plan well? What I mean by that is, do you know what you're getting into on a Sunday morning? If you haven't tackled that issue, you probably should do that before you think about streaming, because everything gets more complicated when you stream. Now all of a sudden when someone says, oh, I didn't realize so-and-so is also singing, right? Well, now that person needs another microphone. And if that microphone isn't available, then you can't hear them online, right? There's 100 different things that planning becomes an issue for when we're talking about streaming. Even camera shots and that kind of stuff, especially with a smaller crew, you got to consider those things. Also, and I'll just say again, in terms of preparation, consider just the overall setup you have. Is lighting good enough for video? Do you have those kind of things in place before you begin? The second, and this is actually something I would recommend you look at, is copyright. Because if your church is notorious for doing things illegally when it comes to playing music or showing graphics, now you've just opened that up to public view all over the world. So consider that. CCLI has a new license out, which is their streaming license. So if you're already a customer, you can, for a really super low rate, I don't know actually, but anybody know what the cost of that is? Anybody done it already?
It depends on church size.
Okay.
It's like 100,
Yeah.
140, 120.
That's what I was going to guess. It's like under $200, and it covers you for streaming your music and that kind of stuff online, which that's never been offered before. Streaming has been a gray area. Because we have a TV broadcast, we kind of already had licenses that covered broadcast, but there was nothing specific in black and white that said, yes, I'm paying for this to be streamed outside of my physical context. Because before that, licensing was always based on how many seats do you have, how much attendance, that kind of stuff. Well, online changes the whole game on that. But consider that. You definitely want to at least know where you're at. And okay, look, if your pre-show stuff, if the music, things you play before service is, a TV show or YouTube clips or something that's just not legal to show. If you're going to show the Monday Night Football game, don't stream it because someone's going to come after you, right? So think about that as far as copyright. And then again, last thing is just consider quality. You don't want to. You want to be able to be engaging to your online audience. And one thing that I would say in terms of just the shift in focus is, are you speaking to your online audience? What we do on Sundays is we have both our worship leader and our senior pastor, when they get up, they address the online audience. They look right in the camera that they know is pointing at them, and they say, hey, good morning, everyone. We're glad you make it. For those of you watching online, we hope that you're enjoying it too. You can, and we have them even just for a second, acknowledge them. As an audience member, you feel so much more connected than if you're just kind of peeking in, So consider that. But also, that's a shift in focus as far as, does your church as a whole, are they willing to commit to that? So, okay. Any other questions or thoughts? We're kind of running low on time. I'm going to shift gears if nobody has any questions. Yes, sir.
Really quickly, I hope. The machine that's doing the encoding, it has to work really hard when it's encoding.
Sure.
When it's not, can it be used for other things, video editing?
Yeah, there's no reason not to do that. Again, you want to be careful that you don't clutter the machine up just from a general computer speed issue. But yeah, if you're going to purchase a fast computer and you want to use it Monday through Friday for something else, I don't see necessarily an issue with that. Sure, yeah. I'm doing it on my laptop right now, and there's a bazillion things on this computer. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to jump back to your audience issue. Don't forget your active military and engaging in your church-supported missionaries. Is what a lot of our live streaming is for.
Oh, that's great. Just to relate to the online audience, we're talking about the fact that the military is able to engage. I have what? Oh, okay. I thought I saw 10 a second ago. All right, cool. Yeah, exactly. It's combined, right? Yes, sir.
How do you record you said you don't use their live streaming feature of recording. So what do you do to record?
Yeah, good question. So there's a difference for sure between what we put online as an archive versus what we do live. And I'm not saying this is something that everybody should do, but if the question is what is our process, I'll explain. We live stream, so we actually start our encoders at like 8:45 for a 9 o'clock service. The reason for that is we want the audience, when they show up to the website, to know it's working. They can hear the pre-show music. They kind of just, it's functioning. As opposed to if you turn that encoder on at 9 o'clock, people are going to be like, I'm not sure it's working. It says offline. Because if I take this, probably should anyways, it's kind of awkward. If I take this thing, right? I didn't even notice that was back there still. But if I take this offline, if you give it a second, that website will show bars, color bars, and it'll say offline. We want people to show up feeling like it's like they're invited, that it's friendly. We'll have graphics and things on the screen just for them to let them, there's a video we play pre-service that explains kind of the context of worship and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's why we don't use the live stream stuff, because the video is 15 minutes earlier than we want. We don't. The person watching on Tuesday doesn't want to sit 15 minutes and watch that. So what we do is we record our video through another output of a switcher to a recording device, and then that becomes a file that we edit. So sometimes we actually replace the audio with some tweaked audio, and then we put a fade on the top and bottom, and we upload it to. We actually use Sorenson, which is Sorenson. It's a video hosting company. But the truth of the matter is, something like YouTube or Vimeo, which are both free, are great options for churches when it comes to archive video. So maybe consider that. But live stream is an option. It's also kind of like one step. When you hit stop, you just type in the name and it saves it, and it's available on their site right away. But again, you have no control over editing and functionality and that kind of stuff. So, yes, in the back.
How do you enter those? Like you said, you have like pre-stream videos and graphics and stuff. How would you incorporate that?
Okay, so the question is, we're being asked is, how do you add video and other elements into the stream? That would all come through the video switcher. So if you have camera 1, 2, 3, you're also going to have ProPresenter, video playback, graphics, whatever, and anything you put on program or on the output will go to the stream. And again, if you want to get super complex, you may want to someday be able to adjust what goes to the stream versus what goes out to your projector. But that kind of adds a whole another layer of complexity to how that functions. So here's another question. Yes, sir.
How much time between when you have your actual service and when you upload?
Oh, when's it available to the audience? We end our recording at 12:30 on Sunday. We take that almost immediately and get it going. We don't publicly publish it until Monday. So Monday afternoon, Monday night. It's typically available online, end of the day Sunday, but just because we don't want to lock ourselves into that time frame and say, I looked for it at 4 o'clock on Sunday. We all like to go home, take our Sunday afternoon nap, and have dinner. So there's a little bit of a lag there for that. But yeah, so yes, sir.
An issue with security. What kind of security? Can anybody download when you stream it, or is that not downloadable to everybody that's watching it?
Okay, so what you're asking is somebody able to watch the stream live and record it or capture it or strip it off?
Right, and manipulate it, change it, and then upload it back on the web.
Sure. I'll answer the question this way. Anybody who puts their mind to something like that can make it work. At the end of the day, if it can be displayed on a monitor and played through speakers, it can be captured. But it's not a savable file. So you can't, unless you really work hard at it, you can't go on the website and say, I want to download this. That's not an option for streaming. It's a live feed to this player, and that's it. But the short answer truly is yes, somebody could capture it. We've never run across a scenario where somebody's maliciously done that. If you want to get super technical, it is copyrighted material. So you could, email the person. If they put it up on YouTube, within a day, if you emailed YouTube and said, hey, this is our content, we'd like it taken down, they would take it down. And we've, had that actually happen before. We had to, not for Sunday, but we've emailed YouTube and had really good results with the speed in which they took it down. So, personally, I wouldn't be really worried about that, just because, to me, the ability to reach people worldwide outweighs in vast proportion, the minimal chance someone's going to want to come and manipulate your video, So that's at least my thought on that. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how many people watch it?
How many people watch our stream on a Sunday? crazy. We're hitting around 1,000 people a week that watch our stream, and so we've joked. Joked, being very excited about it, that it's more than a whole church that watches online. And one of the things that we haven't been great at is kind of tackling who that is. It's hard to know whether that's our people, whether that's people outside. But one of the great things, and I can show you real fast, one of the great things that Livestream does, let me see if I can pull up real fast here, is they provide incredible analytics for you to be able to watch what happened here. So if you bear with me 1 second, I will pull up some for you to see.
Are you counting 1,000 people or 1,000 people connected to your site? Or 1,000 computers connected to your site? If you're doing those groups, you could have a group of 25 people with one connection.
Correct. For Vintage, which is the groups I was talking about, we have a much lower connection count because we are seeing 10 to 12 people per group. I think we're in the I want to say 45, 50 connection group for Tuesday night, so it's way lower. But our Sunday group, again, just because of our structure, we assume that that's individual people. So, yeah, there could be 2 people sitting at the computer watching. We don't have a way to measure that. The other thing that's hard is, so for instance, the University of Buffalo, which is right by us, very large group of people there. When they get counted as one because they share one IP address. So we try, and it's not an exact science. We look at unique connections. We also look at viewer minutes, and we say, okay, so looking at just viewer minutes, we say, if we take this number of how many minutes were looked at and divide that by 60, we should have, now I'm a terrible math person, so maybe this is totally, we probably have like 10 people watching. Everyone upstairs is probably laughing right now because they know I'm terrible at math. But if you divide that by 60, you'll know how many people watch for an hour. So we look at that, also in the unique visitors, and kind of try and mesh those together. But yeah, it's a good point. You don't know if it's a family watching or an individual watching, but even still, we're real happy with the impact it's making. So.
I guess my point was 1,000 is actually your minimum.
Right, it could be more.
If you're counting IP addresses, you could have 2,000.
Absolutely. And again, that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying that that's going to be day one. You launch a stream and look at this. You have a whole church online. But you can build that into an ability for people to engage with you. And, this is another raging debate. People say, well, do we really want the church in America to become the streaming church where we sit at home and put our feet up and engage? Maybe not as an end-all. But as a starting point, sure, why not? Why not have them engage? And we can do a lot of things video-wise and through, kind of broadcast strategy to engage and pull people into that environment so they feel connected, so they have an opportunity. Facebook, Twitter are great opportunities for them to engage in conversation. It's not one way. If they want to ask a question or they want to be involved in it live, we let that happen. Even for CMS, we're doing that CMS NY hashtag, and it's a whole list of people that are just kind of sharing their experience and thoughts. Different for a conference, but on Sundays, we push that real hard. We actually put the hashtag for the day in the corner of the screen and encourage people, even sitting in church, to tweet so we can kind of get that conversation going. And we have people saying, hey, I'm watching live from California, and that encourages the base of people to go, wow, this is a really cool opportunity, So I was going to show you the analytics real fast here. To me, that's just a really cool piece. YouVersion has this, Livestream has this really cool looking interface, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that. It's all pink, which I don't really understand why they chose pink, and there's no way to change it. So I'm always kind of like, don't look at what's on my computer here. But who cares, right? The channel analytics here are super cool, and these basically you can look at not even just things like hits, but also things like how many countries connected. So this says U.S., Canada, India, Austria, Netherlands, Brazil, Russia. Look, there's all these different connections from different countries. So not only can you tell how many people were connected, but also where they were from. And that just gives you a better gauge of what your impact is, So we like that a lot. We actually are working on building a way that routinely we're building a report that shows, how many people connected online, how many people connected on Facebook, all that kind of stuff to kind of better understand the online presence, which is an important thing for us to know. Yes, sir.
How do you go about letting people know that it exists?
Good question. Internally, we push it like crazy. We make sure one of the things that when our pastor or worship leader mentions it is they say, hey, don't forget we're watching live online. Hello to our online audience. That gets the people sitting in the seats remembering that. Again, I said at the very beginning, this is a really, it's a very easy piece to share. So we can say, let's say that everybody in this room has 50 Facebook friends and every single person shared it. Think about how many people would be able to see that. And everyone upstairs is laughing in because they said, oh, there's no way he can multiply that number. But think about how many people would see that link just because everybody sitting in church shared that link. So that's one way. Also, we've done, and this is something that everybody can do. You can do. We've done Facebook advertising, which may seem kind of cheesy, or whatever, but that's the target audience. People who are already connected on their computer and Facebook junkies or whatever. You can laser focus in on who that is, what their interests are, whether it's Christian music or whether it's whatever, and talk about region too. Like you can say, 100 miles from your building or nationwide or whatever you want. And we've actually had a lot of great traction from that where people see, we do a little picture in the corner that says live church online right now. We did one for Easter that said, something about Easter Sunday. If you've missed church, join us live right now. And a bunch of people clicked on that just out of the blue, stone cold, like they didn't have a clue who the chapel was, but they saw on their Facebook feed and they connected. So that's one way. Honestly, outside of that, my biggest and best advice would just be word of mouth, and word of mouth through social media, through email, through that kind of stuff. Encourage people to share that link, and you'll see an audience grow pretty quickly. So it's a cool tool. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
There's a church in the Rochester area that streams. They also have a blog right next to the live stream where they have a dedicated person there driving the blog.
Okay, like a live chat you're talking about.
Any idea what that is?
Sure, yeah. The question is whether or not it makes sense to have some sort of a live chat or live blog next to the live stream. That's actually a model that was invented by lifechurch.tv. That's their kind of thing. And this is something I didn't think to mention, but I will. Life Church has actually released their whole client, their whole wrapper that includes chatting and texting and all that stuff for free. So if your church wanted to implement something like that with a stream, now the streaming you still have to do all the things I talked about, but you can embed that stream in this website. You can manage chatting, you can manage Twitter, you can manage all through their site. So lifechurch.tv is their website. I'm sure somewhere on there's a link to get on that. But it's cool. For us, we're wrestling with that right now. We are in the process of redesigning our online audience section. One of the things we are going to implement from that idea is one-on-one live chat, because one thing we've noticed is that people watch the service online, we present the gospel, and there's no way for them to connect then. And so we're thinking about involving our college ministry to have some people who've been trained to share the gospel just be available online. They click, I'd like to talk to somebody, and then they can chat one-on-one with them. And actually Life Church's solution will support that whole idea for free, which is cool. But as far as the live chat during service, we're shying away from that idea. Because it takes a lot of manpower to ensure that it's being moderated or hosted well. And two, although it does build community, I'm always afraid that the conversation will go off track and we become a magnet for people who just wanted to be antagonists. So, if someone wanted to have a conversation with us, I think that's great. I don't know that we want to have a chat room living as, and that's no offense to those who do decide to do that, but for us, I'm a little bit afraid of that model. So it's viable, but we've never gone that route. So, anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
A question. We have a small team ministry. We've got a $1,000 HD camera, just a handheld, shoots great, laptop. What kind of interface would we need, like to go FireWire from that? Like, was it the Canopus or one of those interface boxes? Would that work well? You bring the camera into that, and your audio into that, and that FireWire into the
Sure.
the laptop?
The question is, if someone had, if you, sir, have an HD camcorder basically that has FireWire out, what would we need to connect that to the Procaster software? The answer is nothing. You could take that FireWire cable, plug it right into the side of your computer. The computer would see it as an input, and you're good to go. Again, my caution then is you only have one input, one source. So if you're trying to use that to capture like a service, you'll have a hard time doing that in a high quality format. But if you wanted to stream something else and you want to have someone walk around with a camera, yeah, that's it. And that's something that Procaster does really well, because it's any digital source in the computer can be seen immediately, which is kind of cool. So, yeah. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
You had mentioned CCLI providing a copyright license. Does that also apply if you posted the service after the fact, or is that a different?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that question. I would assume that they have a provision for that, but it's been a while since I've read it, so I don't know the answer. I'm sorry. The question was whether or not the CCLI live streaming solution licenses you to post as an archive. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. So, anybody else have a question? If not, I'm going to shift gears real quick. We have a couple minutes left here. All right, great. Thank you, guys. To me, like, live streaming is one of the things that's just super exciting to me because of the potential that it's easily shareable. It's something that can be done fairly simply as far as getting it up and running, and it just opens the doors for so much visibility to the church, not to necessarily one specific church, but to the church as a whole, to the message that we have as a whole to present the gospel to the world. So I would encourage you to look into that. I want to tell you about a resource that we have we've created here called churchtechstuff.com. I shamelessly plug this at every one of my classes, churchtechstuff.com. And the reason I'm telling you is this. It's a site we created. We've been working on for about 2 years. It's been a little more developed over the last year. Basically, here at the chapel, we feel like we're really well resourced in the media department, and so we want to do everything we can to resource the greater body church with that. So we post videos and graphics and anything we create as often as we can up on this site for free. If your church wants to download it and utilize it in any context, whether it's a sermon intro or a graphics package or whatever, we really try hard to populate that. And we don't care if you stick your church's logo on it and pretend that you didn't get it from us. That's totally fine with us. We just want to be able to provide those resources. Also, there's a blog on there that I write and contribute to on a pretty regular basis, talking less about technical stuff and more about this kind of stuff, theory behind how a church can employ media to advance the mission. So it's something that I really like a lot and think it's pretty cool. So I would encourage you to go on that. Before we're done, we got a couple minutes left. I want to tell you, if you do like our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/churchtechstuff, or the Twitter account, which is @churchtechstuff, I have T-shirts up here that I will give you for free, as many as I have available, as long as you tell me that you. And look, at someone in the back already got one. So how awesome is that? So that's pretty cool. And then the last thing I'll tell you, which I said this in the last class that I was in, and I was amazed and overwhelmed, and everyone upstairs was also overwhelmed at the response I got. But I always like at CMS to offer, if anybody would like to come up to the control room and kind of see what we do behind the scenes, we have a concert tonight starting at 7. If you'd like to come up for a little bit, I can't have you stay for the entire night, but if you want to come check it out and view it, I can answer some questions and walk through with you. I'm actually personally the one running the switcher tonight, but there's some other guys that probably can answer some questions. If you come a little before 7, I can give you a much better tour than once the concert starts. But if you go out in the atrium and kind of to the left, right across from this door, there's a set of stairs. If you go up the stairs, come on up, and we'll let you in, and you can check it out. So it's a great way for you to kind of know what's happening as far as streaming and video, and it definitely is at a certain level. So I would hope that you wouldn't come up here and then go back home and tell your pastor, we've got to buy everything. So, but to me, I love to go see places that do things, and it kind of gives me inspiration as to what I can do to improve what I'm doing here. So, all right, thanks, guys. Really, really. Oh yes, one more question.
From church leadership standpoint, do you have a policy and procedure for what you will and will not stream as far as events?
Yeah, well, for us, it's more about resources than about policy. We stream every Sunday. We stream Tuesday night. We do not get into things like youth group and other smaller events. And the main reason for that is just sustainability. We could not have a camera crew every single night for every single thing we do. Outside of that, it's really, can we establish a good reason? We don't just stream to stream, but if we know there's an audience out there that definitely will connect with it. For instance, we had a prayer night for this Western York Pray. It was kind of a very focused prayer initiative, and we had an event that we figured wouldn't be good for kids. So we streamed it so that parents could stay at home with the kids but still enjoy it and be a part of it and that kind of stuff. So those are kind of the frameworks that we use. But outside of that, we don't stream anything that's copyrighted either, obviously. So. All right. Yes, sir. We have 1 minute left, so go ahead.
Building on that, we have had services, for instance, with missionaries where we don't even record it because of sensitive subject. Do you have some kind of a plan for
honestly, the way we handle it is we basically say if you have something that's going on to the service, it has to be able to be streamed. We don't do things in service that can't be streamed live. We don't, because of our audience and how much they do that, we don't deal with that. So, all right, guys, you've been an awesome audience. Thank you very much. We're actually rolling with the stream. They're counting me down. So again, thank you very much. ChurchTechStuff.com is the site. Check that out. And if you want to come up the control room, feel free to do that. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.